Sadly, I became embarrassingly familiar with the path leading up to that hideous creature of the Academy, and was punished in so many ways in the process. Yet for some reason I didn't care anymore, and could have touched the shimmering wall hundreds of times without being bothered 1 ounce. Knowing full and well how eventually I was going to get that obscenely tall sorceress in the end was all that I needed. Truth of the matter was that most likely it would be a relief for her to depart with this grisly world, her obvious emotional issues considered. Never had I seen such lifeless and peculiarly incomplete beings. Were they even alive? This was treating them with kindness their deviant mother wouldn't bestow upon them. Such were the thoughts that fleetingly entered my mind as I shredded the sorceress with the filthy claws. But this time I wanted to burn her as well as bleed her. Finally, we were dancing for the very last time, and I tore into her as she performed that fiendish witchcraft. The only thing to do in this empty space, with nothing but the night sky, was to go for her, again and again. Getting desperate, she conjured an esoteric sign on the surface of the water and summoned an enormous troll, effectively forcing me to retreat and catch my breath. Maybe she secretly yearned to be set free, and with offspring like that, who could truly blame her? As if her company on its own wasn't bad enough, she now conjured a radiant moon, glowing with a sickly and most unnatural light. It was getting tedious, this entire ordeal. Avoiding her cowardly magic had merely become a question of shady dodging. What honor was there in such dullard games, preferred by peasants and other simpletons? Attempting one last summoning, she wretchedly called forth one of those ghastly knights moving like hounds. The only benefit from this playful approach was the fact that I got to bleed her, and in the end, that was how I bested that off-putting sorceress.
Little Rani, my dear daughter, weave thy night into being.
Who was Rani? I realized that her daughter somehow had been present, protecting her from afar. As I returned to the academy from that enigmatic space within, I found her sitting there, talking soothingly, and holding the glowing egg of amber in her lap.
Where did ye flee, my sweetings? Come out from whence ye hide. There are books and light aplenty, dither not. Come out, say I, or will ye be gravestones?
What was she even saying? Was she utterly mad?
Is it thy wish to be born anew? To become a sweeting? Reborn of my beloved egg?
I wanted no such thing. But as she sat there all by herself with that curious egg of amber in her lap, I almost felt sorry for her. After trying to pry open a locked chest nearby, something caught my eye. A statue of someone strung up with open arms, all the while being consumed by what seemed to be roots. Unable to deal with this place anymore, and its clearly disturbed residents, I took my leave and headed out of the academy. I had no idea where I was going, but Thops's death didn't feel resolved, nor had shredding that crazed mother now mumbling to herself given me the peace I had hoped for. Finally outside again, breathing delightfully fresh air and looking at the bluest sky, I noticed an alluring castle high up in volcanic mountains. Surely such a well-defended fortress would contain riches and beauty beyond belief. Upon carefully touching a blue seal shimmering in the air, I found myself transported to a foggy and overgrown highway. I had apparently been sent to the other end of the broken academy bridge. From here, I could see the tall towers looming majestically. Everything was covered in a thick and damp layer of fog, but I was drawn to some curious and loud noises. What in heaven's name was that? Was that building moving of its own accord? The weather hindered a more thorough investigation, so I returned to the site of grace, wanting to study my surroundings better. Lo and behold, 'twas another one of those obscene grannies from that stomach-turning cult dedicated to the monstrous, hairy fingers.
You, please, I can read them. Your fingers, please, your fingers.
This one was moaning as well. Who would even trust such a crone?
What a pity.
Were there actually people who felt gentleness towards such a disease-ridden carrier of foul odors?
All you can do is stand at a loss without.
She mentioned that I didn't have the right, but the right to what exactly? I could not tell. I did, however, manage to understand one thing hissed from within the toothless and black pit that was her mouth. There was apparently a grand lift somewhere ahead of me. I found it more likely for peace to reign in these lands than for her to hold her tongue. Leaving the rambling hag behind, I noticed that the weather had improved significantly. Why not revisit the source of that god-awful noise? Oh my goodness. I almost refused to accept what I now saw with my own eyes. A huge stony creature wandering the wetland with an exquisite building on its head. Or was the building perhaps its actual head? Feeling a primal need to witness this magnificent spectacle up close, I steered Torrent down the gust of wind nearby. This was, without a doubt, the strangest thing I had ever seen. I couldn't help but smile at the thought of a poor traveler encountering such a creature unprepared. Having left that lone wandering building only seconds ago, we now observed peculiar lights coming from an unlikely source. Upon further inspection, it became obvious that it was an opening leading into the mountain. I was in need of a proper night's sleep at a decent campfire. Maybe this mine would fulfill at least some of my wishes. As the wooden lift came to a halt, a couple of things stood out. There were lights down here, and fresh air flowed through hidden channels. It was at this point that I drifted into sleep, and found myself running through the now empty corridors of the academy. It was dark, and the scholars were nowhere to be found. Then, my soul was suddenly pierced with pain as I was confronted with the red wolf I had so heinously slaughtered. I sat by its feet for the longest time, suffering its resentful gaze which tore into my innermost self. Desperately gasping for air as I awoke in the mine, I heard distant and familiar voices coming from somewhere.
Is somebody there?
They had to be faint echoes from my dream. One thing was certain. Something was waiting for me in these dark tunnels.